All right. I'm getting some hand signals from Josh.
All right, we're good.
So, how's everybody doing? Shelby Cass is here with Eric Whalen. He is going to talk to us, tell us who he is, what he's doing here. We got Ron over there. Josh is playing the Wizard of Oz tonight. He's the man behind the curtain over there, so he's kind of running things. But we'll maybe change in and out, every once in a while here, or maybe they have some different questions. So, what's going on over there, banging behind the curtain? All right, we're good. Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to barrage with a question right off the bat, so I'll just let you kind of give an introduction, maybe, and like I said, tell us why you're here and who you are. And
well, I appreciate the invite. This is pretty cool. As you know, I'm running for what Jim Banks' seat in Congress. Everyone kind of knows it as Jim Banks' seat. Well, he's served a few terms in that seat now, so that's why most people know it as Jim Banks' seat. So it's the 3rd Congressional District, which is Northeast Indiana. So yeah, I'm running for that seat. I'm one of, I think, right now 8 candidates. So there's a pretty good field. There's some pretty big differences between myself and the other candidates, and a lot of them don't like to be pinned down on the issue, but that's your job to do that. So I really appreciate you guys bringing me on and asking me the tough questions.
You want to start? Because my question is going to be pretty basic.
Oh, yeah, mine is kind of, I guess I'll just start. So before we came in here, we were talking, I don't know if I'm on camera. Before we came in here, we were kind of talking about Social Security.
Yeah.
And you were saying how it's unconstitutional. And I've kind of always had like this pipe dream of like, I've been working since I was 15 years old, 41 now. It's like, it would be great. I would love it if they just cut me a check for what I paid them and said, there you go, you're good. You don't have to pay us any money, and I don't expect anything from the government. I've been working. I save my money. I've got my own retirement account. Just cut me a check.
And not only should they cut you a check, though, they should cut you a check with interest.
Oh, I don't have that much hopes for the government, though.
And adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
Because you didn't pay into Social Security. Mm-hmm. They stole that money from you.
Sure.
You didn't have the option. And if you did have the option, you could have invested that.
Yeah.
You would have made a hefty sum. So not only is it unconstitutional, but it's a welfare scheme. It's a welfare scheme that's at this point pretty much unfunded. And with the issues as far as the retirement boom that's coming up here, it's gone. There's no saving it. Any attempt to save it is going to backfire completely on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I brought it up in one of our previous podcasts too about what's his name, Chris Christie and Nikki Haley, both in their debates saying that, we'll just, you're going to have to maybe work until you're 70. And it's like, okay, so I've been paying since I was 15 till 70, and then what if I live to like 74, 75? It's like, so I'm going to pay that long and then collect for 5 years. But with that, like, what would be your best scenario for people who are, let's say they're right at that 60, 65 age now? How would they, what would happen for them? Let's say they cut us young guys a check. What would happen for the people who are just right at retirement?
Mm-hmm. Well, they should cut them a check too.
Yeah.
How do you solve it without, continuing to rob people?
Yeah.
You really can't.
Yeah.
And there's going to be problems that come up with it. There will be problems. But I say bring them on. It needs to be dealt with. And, and then we could use this as a good opportunity to start cutting government in general.
Yeah.
And start saving some money. Most of what the federal government does is unconstitutional. So, and that's a big reason why I'm actually running for this office, because Republicans have a pretty bad habit of just doing the thing because it's always been done and not asking the question why, or what good is it doing? Well, it's not doing any good. Everything government gets into, they screw up. They make worse. They don't let the free market actually solve these issues. They take it upon themselves, and they do it for control.
Yeah.
They've got control over us in that way now.
Yeah, I was telling Josh just before when I was looking up my phone trying to find a video of Joe Biden. He was getting some questions getting off the helicopter about the border, and he said, "Well, give me the money and the authority, and I'll do it." And I'm thinking, like, you're the president. We elected you. What do you mean, give you the money? It's
How much authority?
It's like these politicians have gotten to this point to where it's like they think that okay, well, give us more money, we'll do it for you. No, we elected you to go there to do that. You don't need extra authority or money. Your job is to protect the border protect the border. You've already got laws in place,
It
enforce
is.
the laws.
It is, and it could be done.
Yeah.
But they do not. They have no interest in securing the border.
No.
Their only interest is playing the blame game. So they can. So this party can point at this party, and they can point back and forth. And meanwhile, nothing changes.
Mhm.
This is the uniparty. This is how they operate. They've got the power, and it switches hands from time to time, just enough to make it seem like there's a difference, but there is no difference.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, nothing's getting fixed.
Yeah.
It's getting worse. You know, we're facing some real problems now with the border,
Yeah.
huge problems. And you're going to tell me you don't have the power to fix it?
Yeah.
You just want more money?
Yeah, more money and more authority is what you're asking for.
That's ridiculous.
And not to mention that, on the TV the other day, they showed with their argument with Texas, they had with the Constantina wire or whatever, they showed that the federal government going down there, and then they had agents lifting up the Constantina wire. So like, you're telling me that you're telling me to give you more money and more authority, but you're the one letting them in.
It's a stunt.
Yeah.
Neither side really has any goal of securing the border. And, what we've seen from, in my opinion, what we've seen from the governor down there is also a bit of a stunt, too.
Yeah.
He could step up. This is a state issue. Texas has every right to protect what's theirs. Every right. And you know what? If he actually did something, there would be states that come around him. But they'd rather play the blame game and make it look like something's getting done, but nothing is getting done with it. Now, numbers may have slowed down. There might not be as many crossings as there would be, but that's pretty typical for this time of year, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So, there's no solution down there. The state's not solving anything. The feds aren't solving anything, and this is a problem.
Yeah.
How would you, so being that the border's been open for so long and so many people have come across, and now we've even seen videos of people capturing people capturing video of known terrorists crossing the border. And one of them, he was on the video, he's like, you don't know who I am yet, but you will. And it turned out I can't remember what his name was, but turned out that he actually has been arrested in other countries for terrorism and, helping, basically trying to overthrow countries, and he just crossed our border.
Yeah, there needs to be some serious pressure put on, the feds to actually do their job. This is their job. As long as they're not doing it, Texas should be doing it.
Yeah.
And, in my mind, other governors should be coming alongside of them too and actually getting it done, because we know this administration has no desire to actually see that through. But there is leverage to force their hand too. But what do we see from the Republicans? No fight. No fight in them. They don't have any fight. They pass continuing resolutions left and right to keep funding the government. They could shut it down if they wanted to. They don't want to. There's no interest in doing that.
So one of my questions would be, how do Hoosiers benefit from sending you to Congress? I know it's a federal, but at the same time, it's like it's us sending you there for our interest. What do we gain from that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, essentially, I'm running to be your voice, to be your representative voice in Congress. So my priorities are liberty and the Constitution. If those aren't your priorities, don't vote for me. I'm not your guy, all right?
Yeah.
But if you want liberty, if you think the federal government's on your back, in your bank account, running your life, and you think that's a bad thing, I'm your guy, all right?
Right.
I'm going to speak up against it. I'm not going to be the kind of candidate who doesn't talk about the issues or say the trendy phrases that sound good but don't really mean anything.
Yeah.
We need someone who actually is going to fight, and not just fight the Democrats, but fight the Republicans.
I know.
The establishment in our party is the worst,
Yeah.
and we're not going to get anything done until we win that battle.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, because I was actually going to my own questions about the budget. So it's been 28 years since they've passed a full budget. It's just been continuing resolutions over and over and over again. And that's what I was going to kind of say is like, so because obviously we're not going to have just one election where all of a sudden we get a bunch of politicians in it that are going to do the right thing. You know, it's
Very unlikely.
It's going to take a long time. So, like, basically, in what way are you going to get in there and try to convince others or pull others to your side to get that done?
Well, it needs to get done.
Yeah.
It needs to be a no vote. We need to hold the line, and we need to be willing to say, let's shut down the government over it. We need, and as long as we're not willing to say that, we're just going to keep kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is a constitutional argument for all of this stuff too. So what my idea would be to call out these Republicans who call themselves conservatives and say, okay, you call yourself a conservative, but you keep voting for this stuff. Nothing's getting fixed. So we either need to come together and stop it and vote no, you know, or you need to leave. You know,
Find
there
out
needs to
who's
be-
in their pocket or who's in their ear,
Yeah.
telling them what to do.
So the next, I guess if we follow up is like, we got a lot of, not a lot of kids, but we got a few kids that watch. So what's the definition of,
Whoa. What? Keep going.
what's the, what's your job going to be if you're elected? So,
Well, like I said, I'm your voice.
I think
What do you mean?
I kind of get what you're getting. I think it's adults are the same way too.
yeah, I was going to say,
He wants to know about the process. Like, how do you get in, apply to do this, and then when you go there, like, what is your actual
I
job?
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people are
like a
confused between-
logistical. Okay,
Well, I think a
sure.
lot of people get confused. I mean, not us, but a lot of people I talk to don't know Congress,
Yeah.
Senate, governor. I mean, states.
They don't know the
federal-
difference.
They don't know
a lot of-
because they're
that's-
not taught
that's
this
the
in school.
education system
Yeah.
now. But yeah, I mean, talking to people I know about who were interviewing, so they're like, oh, well, what's that?
Yeah.
So that yes.
yeah, that's pretty much it. I couldn't quite articulate that.
So I understand the question. How would I educate or inform younger potential voters or maybe current voters as to what my job is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your congressman is a public servant, not a celebrity. Okay. So your congressman should be accessible to a degree. You should be able to get questions in and out and have things answered. All right. They're your voice in Congress. So I guess the best way to describe this would be, you know, if we want to start kind of what is Congress? Okay. Well, Congress is a representative branch of government. Okay, it's the states sending their elected representatives. So you've got the House of Representatives, which is the lower house, and then you've got the Senate, which is the upper house. And this body represents the states. Okay, that we don't represent a federal government. We represent the states. We're the voice of the sovereign states, the 50 states. So if that makes a little sense. If you have a more of a direct question too, I'd be happy to try and answer it too. I don't want to ramble too much here.
Well, no, that's what I was getting. Because like Rodney said, there's a lot of people who don't, like, I tried to explain it, like my father is one too. He's like, well, you know, what is, like, you know, I'm like, well, I try to explain it to him, and I'm like, well, maybe that's an excellent question I could ask him, and he can at least articulate his.
Well, one thing I hear people say a lot is, well, Congress makes the laws. Okay, well, that's, you know, they're making a lot of laws, so they must be doing something right? No, they're actually not doing it right at all. You know, there's thousands and thousands of pages of federal law, but it has nothing to do with what the founders intended the federal government to be doing. The federal government really should be in charge of defense and commerce. That's pretty much it. So anything that kind of extends over those boundaries is more than likely unconstitutional. Now, to really get into it, I would say get a copy of the Constitution and start reading. What Congress is authorized to do is explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. And if it's not mentioned in there, they shouldn't be doing it.
Hasn't Congress been changed since, well, in the way that the founders actually framed Congress, meaning the state and the House? Because the House wasn't it originally like the people's, to give the people control, because they elected the House directly, and then the Senate, if I'm not mistaken, was originally senators were chosen by the state.
Correct.
And, But that's been changed since then. So
Yeah, and I, to be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head when that changed, but that was a bad change because what that brought on essentially was, well, they're elected the same way, so now you have kind of the same voice in both bodies saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, Congress is supposed to be a check and balance between itself as much as it is a check and balance between the other branches of government.
yeah.
So that unfortunately did harm. That was done through a constitutional amendment, which probably should be repealed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is the checks and balances. I mean, it's go on even on a different topic yet, even like electoral college and things like that. It's like people just don't understand the representation and how that works. Like, well, it should just be the most votes, whoever had the most votes, and that's it.
And
You know,
nowadays,
it's just-
what I hear people saying too, because writing laws and passing laws should be a messy process.
Mhm.
It should be
Yeah,
debated
it should be
heavily.
debated. There is no debate anymore. If you ever watch
There
C-SPAN,
isn't.
there's like someone in there giving a speech and the whole gallery's empty. There's like no one in there. It's
There's
all
no one
just,
in there, yeah.
It's all just for looks, just for show.
And the debate that there is, it's done in closed door committees.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
it's
some
filmed, but
back
not
row.
always.
Who knows what deals are going on?
Yeah, and this is a problem. You know, this is a
Yeah.
big problem. It should be open. We should be able to participate and see what's going on. I mean, this is our life. You know,
Yeah.
these are our lives they're messing with here. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we should know. What got me into this race, it's funny we're talking about this because what got me into this race was when there was the battle to get Kevin McCarthy elected as House Speaker. And I don't know if you guys remember that whole situation, but there was a series of votes that it took.
Yeah.
Normally it's done pretty quickly
Yeah.
because the unit party, the establishment, they've got their pick. You know, everyone
Yeah.
kind of knows ahead of time going in what's going to be. So, you know, there doesn't have to be much of an uproar. Well, this time there was an uproar, and it was unprecedented too. And the media just painted the whole thing as terrible news.
Just
This is
dysfunction. It's
this is
dysfunctional.
bad for government.
Yeah.
You've got these troublemakers, you know, who are just, government's not functioning like it should. It's chaos. You know,
Yeah.
the world is falling apart.
Yeah.
But no, this is actually how it should be done. This is healthy debate. This needs to happen.
Yeah.
So I was disgusted by that. You know, what those guys who were voting against McCarthy were doing, in my opinion, was a good thing. You know, he was a terrible speaker, which is
Yeah.
why he's gone. And quite honestly, Mike Johnson isn't a whole lot better. You know, so far we've seen quite a lot of
Doesn't seem to
weakness
be,
from
yeah.
him. So on issues where the party's got the lead, you know, it's a slim majority, but the Republicans have it. They could be driving some issues here, but they're all too quick to compromise.
Well, we've
Yeah.
seen that with even when Trump, when he had the House, I think he had the House and the Senate, and then him, and they were unable to repeal Obamacare. And I'm like, but had it been reversed, and it was the Democrats that owned everything, and they wanted to repeal something, it would have been repealed.
See, and if you follow, and that's a perfect example right there of the Uniparty, you know,
Yeah.
and them fighting, making it look like they're fighting themselves, but they're not. There's no interest in actually getting some of this stuff done.
Well, and then when you have that and stuff's not getting done, then presidents just executive order,
Yeah.
we're still in executive order, and all that does is then the next time the next president comes in, just gonna reverse it and back and forth and back and forth. It's like we look like a joke.
And not only do we look like a joke, but it weakens the voice of the
Yeah.
people. It
Oh,
weakens
yeah.
the voice of the states who really should be directing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And point that out with the executive order thing, like I think it was a criticism of Obama and stuff before Trump got elected that he was pushing all these legislating through executive orders. But then like Trump did, well, one of the ones is the bump stock, which ironically enough, the Obama administration said that they could not regulate bump stocks due to the Constitution, or they didn't have the authority. But that it was Trump that actually did it. So it's kind of weird that it was the Republican Party that violated the Constitution and not.
Yeah.
I don't think it's weird at all. You
Yeah,
know, Republicans don't, they talk out of both sides of their mouths. And if the Democrats can have a Republican push gun legislation, that's a win for them.
Yeah.
You know, that's a
Trump.
big win.
They wouldn't let Trump because they
Well, nobody cares about that anymore. You know,
they were
who's
pushing-
talking about that these days? Just us, apparently.
He was begging them to let him use to let them help him with, or let him help them with gun control, and they couldn't do it because they had already made him to be out the boogeyman, and you can't work with the boogeyman. So then they had a chance to get push the legislation they wanted, but they couldn't because you know,
I think you mean the orange man.
the orange, yeah. So, but I mean, you know, it is what it is. Like, and that's party politics right there. Like,
it is.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's been for such a long time. You know, and we, like I said, going back to the dysfunction, it's a healthy dysfunction, and we need this debate to actually occur.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're not going to see any sort of meaningful change.
Yeah. Right.
And we don't really see debates anymore. Like,
No.
not like they used to do in Congress, where they, you know, they have actual, like, you know, everyone would show up and they talk and argue about issues and stuff like that. Like, we don't see that anymore. Like, you might see one person show up.
Filibusters.
Yeah.
No, this should be a messy process. It
Yeah.
really should be. And you know what? It's not just messy for the sake of messy, but it draws it out. It draws the length of it out. And that's good, because then the people back at home, the people of the states, can actually hear what's going on and hear what their representatives are arguing for and what they're actually trying to accomplish. It's not getting done in a back room, you know, in the middle of the night. It's taken a week to get something simple done, so we're all talking about it because it affects our lives, right? We should be.
So, I watched your other interview on the other podcast. You made reference that you're a Ron Paul Republican.
Yeah. I need to make that distinction because.
What does that mean?
Well, if you aren't familiar with Ron Paul, you got to do just a simple search on YouTube. There's hundreds of videos out there.
Yeah.
And each one will blow your mind. If you know nothing about the guy, he was a congressman. He served out of Texas for, I think, 12 or so terms, a long time.
Yeah.
But he was the most patriotic person in the House that has ever been in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a guy who respected the Constitution enough to vote no and be the only voice to vote. And actually, they called him Dr. No because he would vote no so often on these bills, because his philosophy was, if it violates the Constitution, there's no need to really discuss it or debate it any further. It's just a no vote. And it really should be that simple, too. The Constitution, you know, it lays the groundwork for what that body should be doing. And if they're doing anything above and over that, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So yeah, when you have some time, YouTube Ron Paul.
We all
knew. Okay, he's great on a lot of issues. But you know, but the thing is, though, the Republican establishment, which you know is pretty much all of them, they don't like him. They don't like anybody who's gonna actually be a principled politician and vote on principle to uphold the Constitution and liberty.
There's actually one other guy that's close, and that's Ted Cruz, and he's actually fighting for his life. So, vote Ted Cruz.
You know, and the thing is,
I'm just saying.
If I could go to Texas, I would.
I'm just saying, who knows who's listening?
There are others too. There are others too, but the problem is, they need to be pushed a little bit. They need to be pushed to do the right thing, and until they have either other representatives in the House or the folks back at home saying, you know, this is what we expect from you, it's all too easy to compromise. It's very easy to go along, to get along, to keep everybody in power and everybody happy. You know, especially when things get done, you know, in the back room, and who really knows about it?
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it.
Close the door.
Well, and even these bills that they write anymore, and like this border legislation that they're trying to come up with now, you know, they want to include the border, they want to include Ukraine, they want to include Israel, they want to include, I didn't even know this, but they want to even try to put Taiwan in with it. And it's like these bills are thousands of pages long, and then you've got, you know, a day or two to vote on it. It's like, it's not even possible to read that. It's
and this should be an easy no vote, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it should be, but there's a lot of trading that goes on back and forth, you know. But the principled ones will say no. And there has been a push for single subject bills.
Yeah. That's the way it should be.
It should be. It really should. But there's not enough people who really support that to really get that going quite yet.
And even sneak stuff in.
And even like line item budgeting. They should just go through the budget, vote on every single thing individually, which would provide a lot more accountability, that's for sure.
But see, these are the questions that you need to not only ask me, but ask the other candidates who are running. Do you support single subject bills? Would you support that?
Yeah.
You know, that's an important question. And that answer would be very, very telling.
Yeah.
You could vote just on that alone.
Yeah.
Because if they say no, you have a good idea of what kind of politician you're going to be
exactly.
dealing with.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it really is a lot simpler than people think. They want to make it look complicated.
Sure.
Yeah.
But one simple question like that will tell you quite a bit.
So I obviously you support single.
Obviously, I support that. Yeah. Yes.
So would you be? Are you against marijuana?
Well, marijuana is a state issue.
I
Unfortunately,
forgot.
it's not though in some ways because there are unconstitutional laws regulating it too. So, and those laws need to be repealed. You know,
to put it is, but even though it's a state issue, like you are a representative of our state, and at the same time, what the choices we make, you have to defend in Congress. Like just like Texas, when it decides to do something, like its senators have to, vote, or should it come up in the federal government, whether if they're trying to, how especially with like Texas and the whole court case and how the Constantino wire, eventually you're gonna have to defend that probably in Congress against a bill or something. So that's why we kind of asked to see where.
Yeah, I mean, let me know. Ask me the question. Ask me the tough question.
Well, that was pretty much it. Like, what do you support, like marijuana? But I forgot that you're federal level, not state.
Yeah.
So well, if what are your opinions on like marijuana and being legalized in the state? I should ask.
Yeah, I don't really take too much of a position on it, to be honest with you, other than it's for the people of the states to decide.
Yeah.
Would I support a candidate who was running for state house who wanted to legalize it? I might. It depends. It's one issue of many that I'd have to look at in a field of who knows how many candidates. I mean, so to be honest with you, it's not really that important of an issue to me, other than to say the import of it would be that it is a state issue and it's decided here by the people in Indiana.
The reason we asked is because when we were at
Curtis Hill.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And then that topic came up, and like he
stumbled.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a tough question for a state representative or for the governors, because people are pretty, they've got their opinions on that.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I mean, I can't fault anyone for having an opinion on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of look at it as, like you said, you're the representative of the people in this district. So, I mean, if the people in your district you're representing vote that they want to legalize it, I mean, like you said, then at that point, then you have to go and honor what the people of your district voted for.
And you got to get them to be upfront with their position right away, too, and hold them accountable if they don't. Yeah. That's the process we have.
Yeah.
So
now. Next question is another one that Curtis stumbled on, is the Second Amendment. So what's your stance on the I know your stance on the Second Amendment. Well, why don't you tell our viewers your stance?
Yeah, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But the thing is, it actually is being infringed. We've got a plethora of federal laws on guns and parts and all that stuff. They all need to go. They all need to be repealed. They are all unconstitutional. Okay. The ATF needs to go.
I was thinking about this today, and I think, and we've talked about this too in the past, like about abortion and stuff, or at least, I don't know if we did it on a podcast, but I just always feel like the argument is wrong. I think that most Republicans, when they argue for the Second Amendment, they say, well, you need to be able to defend your house and you need to be able to hunt. That's great, but the intent is so you cannot be the victim of a tyrannical government, because whoever has the guns has the power.
That's true.
And if you look at like Venezuela, you look at like Germany, you look at any country that has confiscated the weapons of their citizenry, that has become either a communist or a dictator, or like North Korea. If the citizens cannot defend themselves against their government, then they are underneath a dictatorship or communism or what have you. But I don't ever hear anybody argue that. No one ever brings that up.
Well, I'll tell you why they don't. Because this is the kind of government that we should be having our guns on us for. This is the tyrannical government, the one we're in. And people don't want to talk about it because that's a problem. Yeah. That the reality of that means that I have to decide whether I'm going to do something about that or not. And it puts people on the spot, and they don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like it. But you're right. You're exactly right. I mean, that is the point.
I just think that it's like, and a lot of younger people, like we talked about earlier, they're just not getting the education on history to see that, like what happens to a country when their citizens have no defense.
Yep.
It's like, look at those governments, look at their history.
Well, look at what they've done when we do have the defense.
Yeah.
Look at COVID.
Yeah.
Look at the tyranny that came down on us during COVID.
Yeah.
And we can defend ourselves.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're going to push and kind of see how much we're willing to take.
Yeah.
But they are going to keep pushing to actually take the guns.
Yeah.
That's coming. If they could get away with that right now, they would.
Oh yeah, they would do it.
In the Declaration of Independence, when it's written in there, it says like talks about a people long suffering, because the founders knew the people will put up with a lot of stuff until before they're ready to like actually take that that leap off the edge into, because you don't know what can come out on the other side of after you rebel and you're trying to put another government together. I lost my train of thought. But on the same topic, there's a book called Negroes with Guns, and it's written by a communist named Robert F. Williams, which is kind of funny because if you read the book, he actually complains that certain people are allowed to have guns, but then he talks about how the only time the police in, I think it's like Georgia, he's in some part of Georgia, the only time that they actually enforce the laws to keep blacks safe is when the blacks were armed, because they were afraid that they would do something. So that's the only time that they would stop something. So I think it's kind of funny how like even among people who would profess ideologies from countries where they did disarm the citizens and put them in gulags, that they were willing to when they're here, they're like, oh yeah, we should arm because the country is tyrannical. So what would let's see how to ask this question.
If everyone could see Josh's face.
Let's turn the camera and put that on you real quick.
The wheels are turning and they're going to tell. At
what point, or what would be a situation where you would think, or where you would find it okay for citizens to push back, and to what degree?
Well, this border issue down in Texas is a perfect example.
Yes.
I mean, the people could solve this too themselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's some folks who have guns down there.
I was gonna say, I think they are at that. I think they're right there.
Yeah. No, but this is a perfect example. Any time the feds come in and do something that they're not supposed to be doing, that's the time to push back against them. Now, just because you're out there with a gun doesn't mean anybody's going to get hurt. I mean, look back at the Bundy situation in Arizona. There were a lot of guys who came out there with guns to push back against the feds who, were trying to drive them off and the cattle off that land out there.
Yeah.
Nobody got hurt, but it was a perfect example. It showed a lot of things. It showed that when people with guns do stand up to the federal government, they will back down. They will.
Yeah. What? So, another question, like January 6th, like I should ask, what's your view on that first before I ask?
Was it an insurrection?
Yeah, like
no.
Yeah.
No, that was definitely not an insurrection.
What do you think of the government's response, I should say? You
mean the government's plan of it?
Yeah.
Well, this is something, of course, that they'd want to do. They'd want to stir this up. There's a lot of incentive for them to stir up animosity between ourselves and between the parties, and it's just going to give them the opportunity to come in and take more power. The whole thing was pretty much created by them.
They got caught with the deleting of evidence.
Yes, yeah. There's been some interesting videos too that have been coming out with the pipe bomb. So as footage comes out, But we know. The thing is, though, we know. We
Yeah.
can look and see what our government's actually doing, and this isn't a big stretch. Our minds aren't blown that they would actually do this too. We know. I mean, we lived through COVID.
Yeah.
They wanted us to get shots. They wanted to enforce that through OSHA.
Yeah.
Like what else? What wouldn't they do?
So, on that same topic, like talking about videos that have been coming out, I don't know if you watch Glenn Beck and his investigative reporting.
I don't anymore. I used to watch Glenn Beck years ago, but
Yeah.
I don't anymore. Although he did have an interview with Ron Paul recently. I didn't watch. I heard it. That was a pretty good one.
Well, I watch him.
darker.
Is he?
Years.
I only watch for his investigative, because he does really good investigative reports. And then he's working with another reporter who was at January 6th and has been doing stories. And as he dug through the film footage, so during the whole January 6th,
Insurrection.
or no, when they were looking at the investigation in Congress.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they found that two of the Capitol Police, and then he's I can't remember whose head of security is.
I don't
Nancy
know the guy's
Pelosi, I think.
Yeah, but I don't remember the guy's name.
Yeah. They found that they had lied in their testimony, and so that means that there's people sitting in jail right now with no way, not knowing when they're going to get out.
Yeah.
Some of them haven't even had a trial yet. Like as a representative, what would you do to fight on their behalf?
Well, someone needs to speak up for them. They shouldn't be held there. They shouldn't be being held at all.
Yeah.
So there needs to be awareness brought about on this, and it's going to take more than one person, but one person can certainly get it going. And there are voices out there that are talking about it, which is good, but there needs to be more, enough to where something actually gets done for these guys, because what's being done to them, it's terrible. It's terrible.
It's crazy.
I had a theory it's going to happen again. We talked about this on one of our podcasts, where I said, long story short, if Trump is elected, I think there'll be another protest, and they'll say Trump overreacts to it.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Or if Democrat Biden or whoever, or Gretchen Whitmer, if she wins, then I think there'll be another protest, and then they'll say, oh, it's Republican, the conservatives, MAGA people, and then we can't have elections anymore because,
Wait, she's running?
it's rumored.
Well, why wouldn't they do it again? Why wouldn't they?
But I'm saying I think it's gonna happen no matter who wins.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna happen again, and it's gonna be
And it will,
some false flag stuff.
because it worked.
Yeah.
You got pretty much half the population.
People are afraid to go protest now.
Yeah, and you got half the population thinking that it was an insurrection and want these people in prison indefinitely or worse. So if it worked for them, they're gonna keep going. Sure.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on Newsom, Whitmer. I someday think maybe Al Gore's gonna jump back in again. I don't know, but either way, I don't know.
So what's your political career? Do you have a political?
I don't, Ron. I don't have a political career. I've never had any political ambition. I was really pissed off with the way that they were demonizing the group that didn't want McCarthy as House Speaker. I said, this is ridiculous. These people need some help. This is the establishment they're trying to fight.
Okay, so I knew that already. I just wanted you to tell everyone else.
You have had involvement with, going out, and you have experience in like some of the politics, as in like going door to door for people.
Well, a little bit, yeah. I did volunteer for Ron Paul's last presidential run, and I volunteered with his campaign and made calls and stuff. I was a precinct committee person in Denver City and County, so that's what that is kind of a neighborhood sort of organizer. You would try and get people out to vote, bring people into the meeting and get them involved in the party and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I guess I would say that maybe where I got my feet a little wet, but I never saw myself running for office. So this just came about all of a sudden. I thought, you know what, more normal people need to be doing it.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
And I assume your family and everyone supports you and
doing
everything they can to help you.
As much as they can, which is great. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of support because I'm saying things that not a lot of people will say. You know,
Yeah.
and some of them might if there's a little bit of pressure put on them to say things, but a lot of times people don't know the questions to ask. Going back to, we're just not taught this stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not out there researching this stuff for yourself and trying to figure out how it works, you know, I didn't grow up learning about this stuff in school. They don't teach you.
Which you talked about abolishing the education, Department of Education.
Yeah.
Well, what would that look like after you, like going forward?
It could look like anything, really.
Yeah.
And it's not the federal government's job to say what it could look like. It's up to the states. They can do whatever they want on this issue. And,
Right.
and you as a citizen can get involved locally. You can get involved with your school board. You could run for office if you've got a solution for how education should run in your state. But let's all agree that the federal government should be not at all in education.
I thought that almost my entire adult life, even before I even knew whether I was liberal or conservative, whatever. I just always thought that was the most ridiculous thing, to send your tax dollars, send all your money to Washington just to have them dictate and dole that back out.
It's only ridiculous if you believe in freedom and liberty.
Yeah.
If you want those who have the power to control the minds
Yeah.
of those who are being educated, it's not ridiculous, it's perfect. You know?
Well, I think it's so funny. People who are against school choice, who, it's just nuts. It's like, okay, I'll go off on this whole thing. I was going to save this for another podcast at some point. But basically, you know, if I want to send my kids to whatever school I want to send them to, that's my school money. That's my tax dollars. If I want to take my money and go put it towards this school over here and send my kids to this school, that's my tax dollars. That's my money. That's my school money. The school wasn't owed that money if my kids aren't going to go there. And it's just like,
oh, how dare
you well, it's like you want to talk about like the caste system, you know, of oppression. It's like you have like Soviet Union or places like that where if you were born poor, you stay poor. You know, if you were born in a wealthy family, you stay in that wealthy family, or you do what your family has done. It's like, well, that's what that is that's the liberals or Democrats saying that you were born in this poor neighborhood, you have to go to that school in your poor neighborhood. You can't choose to go to some other better school if you want. No, your money has to stay here. It has to go to this school that sucks.
Yep.
So you're just stuck in this system. And it's like, but yet they always say that Democrats and liberals are for moving up and the American dream's dead. Well, if it is, it's because you're not allowing people to choose the school where they want to go to get educated. It's like, you might as well tell people, well, you can't go work on that side of town either. You have to work in your neighborhood, or you can't go shop over there in the fancy area. You have to stay in your, I can just go on and on about it.
You are absolutely right. They know what they're doing, and they want it that way. They don't want the options. They don't want quality education to actually be affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, can you imagine that if kids actually learn something?
Yeah.
They learn something about the Constitution, maybe learn some morals too.
Yeah.
You know, oh man, there'd be chaos. You know, jeez, no, we need to get the government out of education.
Yeah.
And really, the federal government, of course, absolutely should have nothing to do with education. And I'm not talking about just grade school here. You know, they shouldn't be loaning money for college age students, because all that's doing is inflating the cost.
It's inflating the cost, yeah.
So, and that's true, you know, if we brought it back down to a state level, those same principles apply. The free market is really what provides solution to these things.
Yeah.
Anytime you give money, you give your tax dollars, all you're doing is limiting choice and making those limited options more expensive.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you go to just on another tangent, it's like when you go to a doctor and they say, well, if you don't have insurance, you pay this price. If you do have insurance, it's this way higher price up here. It's because it's guaranteed money. They're getting money sent to them. They'll bill whatever they want because they know the insurance company, or with colleges, the government's going to give you those loans. We're going to pay for it. So just jack the price up as high as
that's
it'll
what
go.
they do. And that's what they do. And there's so many people stuck with that debt, you know.
I'm waiting on a question from somebody, but I don't know what's going on. But
Oh, all right.
I had a question for you, but
Um,
I don't know when they're going to send it, so it's probably not going to happen.
Well, that's all right. We can keep talking. This is
Well,
good.
I kind of already know the answer to this question because, like you said, if it's not in the Constitution, the federal government shouldn't be doing it. But realistically, as far as what you can accomplish in your term in office, what agencies would you like to see gone besides the Department of Education? Like, what do you think could possibly be cut without, like I said, I kind of know your answer, but realistically,
just about all of them.
just you think that
We need to get these conversations started because you know, and here's the thing, you know, we can talk about what are we going to cut, you know, cut a little spending here around the corners. That's not a solution, though.
Yeah.
They really need to go. And the thing is, we need to start electing representatives who are willing to say that.
Mhm.
No, I'm not interested in cutting a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm interested in abolishing
Eliminating.
it, getting rid of it.
Yeah.
That's the solution, and that's the only solution. And anyone who's not, you know, doesn't have the guts to say that, they're not going to have the guts to fight for you in Congress.
So
They can't tell you
And
that.
I
Yeah.
know it's state level, but what do you think about income tax?
Yeah, I think the income tax is terrible. It's terrible, you know, and that should also go. Well, how would we fund government? Really, we shouldn't be funding government. Like I said earlier, most of what the government does is unconstitutional.
yeah.
Most of it.
I mean,
So, yeah.
it's not just state, because there's also a federal income tax. So.
Yeah, you're right about that. And here's the problem with the federal income tax. Because we're paying federal income tax, the states aren't able to actually do the things they want to do.
Yeah.
You know, because that money goes to Washington
Yeah.
and then it gets siphoned back to the states with conditions.
Yeah.
You know, so
Well, it's pathetic when you look at your paycheck and you look at, like, you know, your county, city, federal. It's like the town I live in, the county I live in, the amount they take compared to this big federal government, it's just insane when you look at how many hundreds of dollars they're taking compared to like the $40 my county takes or city takes or whatever. It's like, how does that make any sense? Well, I don't even. Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know where that's going.
Don't know where that's going.
guys, this whole system
Yeah.
is terrible.
Yeah. Or
It's-
even like, yeah.
It's so far from what the founders envisioned that there's no trimming around the edges that's going to solve these problems. It's meaningless. And with where we're at the point of a national debt, 34 trillion, you can't cut around those edges and make that work. It's not going to work, you know? So yeah, we actually need some pretty big things to start happening. We need people willing to say, yeah, we need to abolish the Department of Education. Yeah, we need to abolish
IRS.
the EPA. Yeah, we need to abolish the CDC. You know, really when it comes down to it, what is the federal government doing that the states couldn't do if they wanted to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's why I always tell these guys too, like, it cracks me up when I hear people say, oh, the rich should pay their fair share. And it's like, okay, so like people who are screaming for fair share, it's like, what do you think? You think you're just like gonna get extra money? Like if Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk pays a whole bunch of extra money to the government, how do you think that's gonna benefit you? Like, what are you gonna get out of that? Like, we're not gonna benefit that, and there's no way to pay off $34 trillion in debt.
No. But that is, to a lot of people, that number is just astounding. It doesn't make any sense to them. And, you know, the public education system has done a pretty good job of just making people angry at those who have more than them.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really the problem.
It's separating people by classes.
It is. They're weaponized against us, and we've seen this with the FBI and CIA.
Yep.
And, you know, they're weaponizing us to go after each other.
Mhm.
So where are the solutions going to come from?
Yeah.
They're not going to come until we can get past some of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and we can all agree, let's at least start abolishing some of this stuff that the federal government's doing that it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Since, I mean, you're on here, you're saying these things, right? Like, do you think that we'll just leave it at Indiana because everyone's, you know, electing you. Do you think there is a will behind that to support those same things, or do you think Indiana, like mainly conservatives?
I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is there a will? Do people want liberty? Will people get behind that?
Do they even know what? Well, sometimes I think, because talking to people, I don't think a lot of times they don't know what liberty is.
Yeah.
Like, again, going back to educate, like some of the things that they think that they're, you know, is government's job that isn't really. Like, do you think that if you ran on these principles that there's enough people to back you, not just you, but anybody?
Well, we're going to find out. And
Yeah.
we're going to find out by talking about it. And I'm not going to be the only one talking about it.
Yeah.
You guys are going to be talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, because people are waking up. People are seeing the problems because we're facing some pretty big problems. Families are facing big problems. The cost of living is going up, way up. people can't afford everyday items, on a normal income. Most people can see a problem there. So the question's starting to run in a lot of people's minds who maybe have never really thought too much about this before.
Yeah.
How's this happening? How is this possible? So as long as we can tell them, give them the answer, I think, people are always ready for liberty. People always want that. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know. But that's our job. That's up to us to tell them. We don't want to run your life. We want you to run your life.
Yeah.
And we want you to have the best life possible. And the only way that's going to happen is by getting government control out of the equation and letting you make your own decisions.
Yeah. Do you want?
No, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, wasn't there about a candidate? Before I was going to ask something, but I just thought about the other candidates running.
Oh, we already talked about that.
Oh yeah, there's a pretty big field of us now. I think there's 8 or 9 of us who are running for this seat. So yeah, it's interesting. I wish I would hear more from them about some of their positions, but the thing about politicians, they want to say pretty much as little as possible. They want your vote, but they don't really want to give you a whole lot to go on.
Yeah,
we've
seen that. I'm not trying to disrespect.
Don't cause trouble, Josh. We still may want other interviews.
That's what I tried to be like. I have to, but
make those calls. Get people out here, and then when they don't, come on and tell them, hey, we made in this invitation, and they flat out refused. Well, that tells you something right there, because they're running to be your voice, and if they're not willing to come and sit down and listen and talk to you, what kind of voice are they going to be for you?
Well, we were at the dinner. We heard a lot of slogans, and it seemed like sometimes when pushed on those slogans, it seemed like they didn't have a whole lot of infrastructure back to back up the slogans. It seemed like a lot of times politicians throw out these slogans and they just expect, like trigger words pretty much that most conservatives are like, yeah! And they didn't, but when,
Liberty.
Here's one of my favorites. We support Indiana farmers. Okay, well, how? Yeah, how? Why? What? Let's talk about that for a minute. But I don't think all of the other candidates. I know all of them aren't. There's some good ones running. Their heart's in the right place. They're good people. Maybe they don't know about some of the issues and they don't have those in-depth answers, and that's okay. But there's another kind of politician too who wants you to elect them, and they're purposefully being deceitful and they're purposefully not answering your questions. That's different.
Who would you say is one of some of those? If you say there's other good candidates and stuff.
Listen, I'm the best candidate. I'm the Liberty candidate in this race.
I agree.
Okay.
So far, you're the only person I've heard some of the. Say some of the things that you said, some like us, we didn't. Some of the people running, we didn't know at the time when we were at that dinner, and then we got to meet them, and everyone said Second Amendment, but I think you were the only one caring actually that was when you say other candidates and stuff like that. So if you could, let's put it this way, if in the future, if you could serve alongside some of these other candidates, which ones would you want to work with?
Well, to me, when you start talking to someone, you can find out pretty quick what their intentions are if you ask the right questions. There are a few people who can act and can play the game and hide it.
Yeah.
But I want to know what their heart is. I want to know what their real intentions are, and do they have the guts to actually back up what they're saying?
Yeah.
Because there's going to come a time when they're going to be on the floor, and maybe their vote might be a yes or no on a certain bill.
Yeah.
Well, which way are they going to go? Are they going to cave and go along with everybody else because that pressure's there, or are they going to be the only one saying no? On principle, I am not voting for this.
Yeah.
And that takes a little bit of time. You got to get to know people and stuff to do that.
Well, I think Trump and Pence is a good example. Trump kind of mischose on that with when he needed Pence to have his back, Pence was not the guy for that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's why I was asking, kind of like, is there anyone that, like, if you were in that position and then through whatever you were able to work alongside someone, who would that out of your peers, or I guess who would you choose to work alongside you?
Well, I would work with all of them to the extent that I could, without compromising my principles. And with what they're willing to join me in accomplishing, I would work with them on that.
Because it's really a team effort.
I think just from the few that I've met, like at that Curtis Hill event, it seems like everyone has a vastly different background.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get different advice, or you're going to get different knowledge from each one. Like, okay, we'll say like Wendy Davis. She was a judge. She's heavily involved in like criminal justice system. Got Marlon Stutzman, he's like the farming community, right? So has experience with farmers. And then you've got Tim Smith, who's a business owner, right? Started his own business and so on and so forth. So I think you're going to get knowledge from all different areas.
Sure.
And so, like you said, you can work with all of them in certain forms and take that knowledge that they have and maybe apply it.
Absolutely. And being in a body of 435 members, you've got to be willing to work with people to a degree.
Yeah.
There's got to be areas of agreement, but you also need to stand firm on your principles too.
Yeah.
So where people would come and join the right cause, the cause for liberty, I'd be willing to work with anyone on that.
Okay.
But I'm not going to compromise my principles to get something done. That's not what I'm trying to do here.
If you want to ask this question, I'm gonna text him, see if you want to ask this question.
And that's important because, like, there's going to Congress and down in Washington, like, there's going to be a lot of pressure, and it's a Shark Tank.
It is.
So it's good to know that if put pressure on you, you're going to stand by.
Well, and I think an important thing to do, and I'm sure I'm not the only candidate, especially the only grassroots guy who's doing this, is having the right people around you right now. Having the right people in your corner backing you, not only encouraging you, but, kind of praying for you, for example, encouraging you to do the right thing. Surrounding yourself with those kind of people is important, not just now, because things can change pretty quickly.
So, all right, if you had to choose a head of security, John Wick, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hey, I don't need a head of security. I'm on.
Need his head. It's covered.
Just kidding.
So did you get our on the phone question?
No, he said he's gonna try to write it up real quick.
Okay.
He probably.
Well, we'll hang out for a minute or two. I don't mind.
So I got one more question. This is nothing to do with like your chances of winning or anything like that. I brought this up to these guys before. What sometimes drives me nuts is you get great candidates. Like it's no secret I liked Vivek Ramaswamy.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Ted Cruz. In fact, I had voted for Ted Cruz over Donald Trump in the first election. But and then there's other ones, Tudor Dixon up in Michigan, and there's other candidates that I've liked in the past where it's like they're a one and done. It's like they didn't win, and then where did they go? It's like they disappeared. Ted Cruz obviously still is.
I was gonna say, like a Ted Cruz, I think what happened with him is I don't think he has I don't think he loved being in the mud. That's what happened.
But in the unfortunate event, if you would not win, what would be your next step? What else would you be interested in running for?
Yeah, that's a great question. At this point, I really don't know.
Because I don't want you just to disappear if you don't. I really hope you do, but you gotta have a backup plan.
Yeah, well, my thing is I'm trying to encourage everybody to get involved more too. Even with this race, 8 or 9 candidates. Some people say that's a big field, but I say the more the better. The more voices that are out there, the better we can actually elect the most conservative, the best one for our district. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, I want to see change. I want to see things change. They have to. I mean, things are so bad right now, and they're going to get a lot worse too if they don't.
Yeah.
Like, we need to come together and find a way to make that happen. Does that mean that I'll run for office somewhere else? Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on the particulars. And there are particulars with campaigns too, that you need to kind of go over and have an idea of what you're getting into. And, I don't want to waste my time if, you're better suited for a job. I want to join your campaign and support you and knock on doors for you.
So the next question would be like, how does this process work? How did this start? So you go in and you sign your name.
What paperwork?
Yeah, what paperwork? How does this process
It really isn't as difficult as most people would think. I've never had the ambition to do this, but you can pretty much if you're good with a computer and decent with the internet and Google, you can find your way around on how to get this done. There is paperwork, yes, and you do have to file with the Federal Election Commission, and you have to file with the state. And if you're raising money, there's documentation that has to be done quarterly and at the year end and stuff. But it really isn't that hard to find out. And I think people just need to know that, because I think a lot more people would be willing to get involved with a race. Maybe not Congress, that not everybody's interested in that, but maybe something local, like a school board or, who knows? But, we need to start getting involved. So I would just encourage anybody who's interested in getting involved, start asking questions, get online and start Googling.
Does the Republican Party have any resources where they would help a candidate?
They would, to an extent, the Republican Party is there. But you got to remember, they've got their own goals and priorities too. The establishment within the party wants like-minded candidates to fill offices. Okay, so if you deviate from some of the establishment positions, you're not going to find a whole lot of help within the party. But don't let that discourage you. Know that that's a good thing, because the party is kind of going off the rails. And we, like I said earlier, the change really needs to happen first within the party. We need to figure this out so, we can actually be in opposition to the actual opposition party, which is the Democrats. We need to figure out what we're going to do as a party and say, these are the positions we're going to hold, and we're going to fight for them. We're actually going to do something about it instead of just talk about it. And once we get a consensus there, then we can start fighting this battle over here.
Which I think people on both sides are kind of feeling that, because I've talked to, we can call them people on the left, but I don't even know, they're more liberal, more of a center left, right? They would call themselves liberal, but some of them feel like their party has actually left them. And I'm super far right, so
I'm over there with you.
Yeah,
we're probably right next to each other over there on the extreme right.
And I feel even when I was center right, because when I first started this journey, I always felt like I was the Republican Party. Why is it that we're always losing stuff and we're never gaining, whereas the left is always gaining? But then when I started to figure out that a lot of people center left feel like they're losing stuff too. So I think on both sides, we kind of have this thing of the parties leaving.
That's the uniparty. Yeah. That just goes to show you it's all about this mass between both sides that pretty much stay together. And then you've got the grassroots kind of, they're fringe candidates, but they're being left behind. But they're not only being left behind, they're being excluded. They're not being let in. Like I said, if you don't hold some of these positions at the establishment, if you don't say that you want to preserve Social Security for the next generation, the Republican Party is probably going to look the other direction if you put your name in the hat for an office.
Most people have been trained for I should say generations before us have been trained Social Security, that kind of thing is kind of, because when they were paying into it, it was still kind of you still had that idea that you'd be able to retire on it. And now it's kind of everyone kind of realizes this might not really be the case. I might be older and then not be able to pay into this whole time and then not get anything from it.
Yeah, no, I think it's safe to say that people our age don't expect to get anything.
Yeah.
And if you do, expect the cost of living to be so high that whatever you get isn't going to buy you anything. You know, that's where we're at right now. And really, you know, there were people who saw the writing on the wall back then too, you know, and knew where this was going, you know. But they didn't have a majority actually do something and, you know, kind of fight back. But that's what we need. We need to kind of reclaim that majority and start pushing back against this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Anyone else got any questions?
I was just going to add on, like what you were saying about how it seems like, at least to us anyways, that the liberal side or Democrats are always taking. And I've always in my own mind thought, well, you know, the big difference and the reason for that is it's, you know, conservatives supposedly, you know, you're supposed to be conserving the Constitution, right? Protecting rights. Or if you're a liberal, you're acting more on emotion and you're pushing an agenda of more entitlements or more things that the government should be doing for you. So it's easier. It's easier. It's like it's a lot easier to be mad at someone, right, than to accept them and love them. So it's like when you're on the liberal side, it's more. It's easier for you to just want and have that anger than it is to be a conservative and just love and conserve the Constitution and fight for your rights. It's just a lot harder to do. It's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Whereas on the liberal side of it, it's just so easy to give into your emotions and just.
It is. It's an emotional argument because if you actually thought about it rationally, the free market provides solutions to all these things. You know, the concept of liberty and self-ownership and property rights and sound money, all these things are the solution. You know, government top-down answers don't work.
Yeah.
They don't work. And we're seeing that now, but they never work. You can't perfect them. You can't make them better to work. They won't.
Yeah.
The truth is, we don't know the extent to which we could have wealth right now. And what I mean by wealth is not all of us filthy, stinking rich. I mean, have a society that's actually, you know, predicated on values.
Yeah.
Being able to make a decent living, you know.
Remember when people could take vacations on regular salaries? And they had summer vacations. Like.
Well, and what do you hear now? Like you'll see, you're going to start seeing it here in the next couple of weeks. We got our tax return, we can go on vacation. It's like, that's the only way you can take a vacation is if you get a tax return that you're letting the government give you money. It's like, this just came to my mind when you were talking about the economy and stuff like that and the whole fake, trickle down. The Democrats always say, it's trickle down, it doesn't work. It's like, but yet you're asking people to accept government trickle down. So the free market can't help you, but let the government trickle down help you. It's like, no.
They've brainwashed and they've done that, like you said, by appealing emotionally to these people. And who doesn't want people to benefit? Everybody does. You know, it's easy to say, the government provides these solutions. Okay, let's go with that. Well, let's stop and think about it a little bit. What is actually going to be a solution here?
What's the government getting out of it?
Yeah.
They're not. I mean, they've got a motive behind it. You know, if they're just giving you free this or that, what are they getting back?
To stay relevant and to keep.
Yeah, it's like you go to work every day and you get a paycheck. You're getting a paycheck, and then your company workforce getting whatever you're doing. You're building something or selling something. But the government's like, what are they getting back? It's like votes, power, authority.
Yeah, everything that we're not getting. Basically.
And so we should probably clarify this because when you say far right, there's a lot of different ideas of what people have.
Right.
I think I said extreme far
He
right.
said extreme.
Yeah. I would say the Constitution is, what people like. That's right. The Constitution is right. I mean, not right or wrong. It's it's
far.
Yeah. But and there's fringe. There's like goofy, wacky people kind of doing their own thing. Well, they're not.
That's where Josh is at.
I'm because I personally am not I'm not anti-constitutional, but the more I've been studying the Constitution and reading books and the more I start to understand the arguments of both the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, like I start to see it's the Constitution. Don't say it out loud, but the Constitution was basically kind of it was a way to create a centralized or a more centralized government.
It did.
And they didn't get what they wanted. Like, because if you look at the Federalists, or you could call them nationalists, writings afterwards, they actually write how they wished what they were trying to do with it, and they didn't get where they wanted to.
Here's
the Republicans.
Here's, I think, the great part about the Constitution.
Yeah.
We can change it. We can change it. If we have the will to change it, we can do that.
Yeah.
But
So-
they also can change it. The left.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're constantly attacking it. They're constantly delegitimizing it, and they're saying this doesn't mean this, or general welfare means we can do this, this, and this. So yeah, they will then interpret it, the way they want to.
When they want to, if it's depends.
But
Because if it's in their favor, they use it. If it's not, then they demonize it.
Right, and they will, and
Yeah.
they'll use it to their benefit that way. But my point is to say that the power ultimately lands in the hands of the people. We've got the power here, okay, and we can make the right changes if we had the willpower to do it.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of surprises a lot of people because they don't really quite know what to make of it, but really what I mean by that is the states are sovereign. The people of the states created the centralized government.
Yeah.
The people of the states can uncreate the centralized government too, if they wanted to. And that's going back to the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
But they really can't, because that's what the Civil War was. They tried, and Lincoln was like, nope.
Well, they're going to always try.
Yeah.
They're always going to try. They don't want to give up their power.
Well, I mean, the South, they tried to secede because they felt like the Constitution, or it wasn't going to benefit. But Lincoln was like, no, you actually don't have a right to secede. Like, we're going to force you to stay into the Union. And that's what they did. Lincoln was tyrant, but anyways.
See, I knew we were next to each other. I knew it. See, he's not so fringe like you were thinking. No, you're right. You're exactly right. And the most unfortunate part about all that is it's not taught.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Like he imprisoned judges. There's a book called I think it's The Truth About Lincoln, and it goes and it. The funny thing is, it'll tell you all these things and it references them, but then you can look in the book. He actually put all the references and where you can find it, and you can read the documents in the back of the book. And so he's like, I'm not just saying that. Like, here's the evidence.
Oh yeah, there's good books out there that will give you an honest critique of history during that era. And to be honest with you, I think this is what's coming down with a lot of the monument removal and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big reason why they want to start removing some of these monuments, because they don't want us to know our history. We know that because they don't teach it, but if they can actually remove these monuments, we're not going to remember.
Yeah.
No one's going to have any inclination to even think about some of this stuff.
Which is what Marxism is. It's basically they control language. They control history and they control the language, and through that they're able to. I mean, we've seen the great like my dad and a lot of people from his generation are like, how did this happen? Because they use the same words, but they have different definitions. So like when your kids and they're teaching your kids and stuff, like it's a completely different like thought process. Our kids are becoming foreigners because of the education system. Because the left was smart and they hijacked the education system because they knew that if you indoctrinate or subvert the education in kids, that like it would take a long time before anyone could try and like undo it.
Oh yeah, and we're seeing the fruit of that. We're dealing with that now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with those are problems created from public schooling, and not just indoctrinating and telling them what to think, but withholding truth.
Yeah.
Too. Not giving them the ability to actually think for themselves.
Well, which is a good question, because I don't think I asked. How would you deal with the critical race theories and the cultural Marxism, all of that, that is actually now the core of the left and is raising this generation?
Yeah. That's a good question, and I think everywhere that's found in the federal government to be promoted, it needs to go.
Yeah.
And then it comes back to the states. What do they want to do? Because ultimately, who's going to enforce it? A lot of people favor federal legislation, telling the states, what they can and can't do, but who's going to enforce that?
Yeah.
Do you want, a new bureaucracy, the education police guard, the EPG? Do you want them, telling you what you need to teach your kids? I don't. No.
Yeah.
That battle needs to be fought in the states.
I think a legislation basically banning that stuff from the like federal, like public institutions and things like that. It is because it's subversion. Like it's literally what our enemy came up with to subvert the United States.
Well, what we can do at the federal level is defund all this stuff. That's why the government shouldn't be dealing at all with education, funding college, any of this stuff. None of it.
But what about other governments funding colleges? Like China donates tons of money to our colleges to push, CRT, all this stuff.
Yeah, it's up to the states. Let them deal with it. Because if the people of the states don't want to deal with it, ultimately it's not going to be dealt with.
Well, the reason I asked is because I thought it was so. Part of the federal government's job is to war with it. Like if we're having conflict with another outside nation, because subversion is basically like, because everyone thinks that Russian, that it was a whole spy thing, but that's not what they came up to destroy America. They knew that they couldn't force on force destroy America. And so, like the stage that we're in is called, the first stage is demoralization, and that stage in America is almost complete.
Well, let me interrupt real quick because if we're gonna do this, we're gonna need some constitutional amendments to do this, and I wouldn't support any. I wouldn't do it because, war powers are pretty specifically defined. And, if we're talking about, information wars and stuff like that, there's no constitutional authority for the feds to be dealing with that at all. So if you want them to, we're the government, we can change that. I don't.
Well,
I would much rather it be handled by the states, but it's a good conversation.
But the thing is, if we can't address it, then we're going to lose. Like, that's just all, we're already losing. We're even seeing the Republican Party start to use that.
Well, I don't think we're going to lose if the federal government doesn't step in on some of those issues. The only way we'll lose is if we don't step in, if the states don't step in and do that. That's the only way. Because here's the thing, we're going to be relying on a corrupt government, ours, to do the right thing.
Well,
I'm not going to do that.
Indiana state government it's just a smaller.
Well, the states can handle this.
Yeah,
the states can handle it any way they want.
Hope, but this is a question I guess I could ask. Like, what role do you see the federal government playing in our defense from outside forces? I mean, because the ideology thing, but also we get most of on our electrical grid, we get a lot of our transformers and stuff from China, and who knows what's in that, what is their role in combating the possible threat from outside nations and the programs they're implementing?
Well, they can control what they're constitutionally authorized to control. So should the feds be bringing in some of these products for their purposes? Probably not. But should they mandate that the states don't? No, the states can figure that out on their own. The states know better anyway than the federal government. But like I said, the war powers are specifically specified. That we're talking about force here. We're not talking about mind games or something like that. Now, but like I said, the Constitution can be amended. We can make the changes if we wanted to. Yeah. But I think that's a bad approach. I think that's a really bad approach.
I agree. I struggle with that.
My brain's been going here too. Two things. So I think kind of like where you're going with the education and the education. I think that's maybe kind of where the school choice thing would come in. I mean, you're seeing people in droves going to homeschooling or going over to private schools. So it's kind of almost like a free market thing, even though it's government's education. It's a free market thing. If people all of a sudden have school choice nationwide, or they're given their money, they're allowed to keep their money and go to the schools, they're going to choose other schools. And eventually these teachers unions or these public schools are going to start saying, wait a minute, we don't have any students anymore. Wait a minute, these teachers don't have anybody to teach, and they may start changing their tune on the things they're doing. Second thing is kind of like what he's saying, you know, with the states, that being up to them, who they want to do business with. I mean, it's the federal government that caused the problem in the first place. Because I don't think, let's say the state of Indiana, like with steel mills or whatever, I don't think the state of Indiana approached China and said, hey, can we make deals with you to get our steel? No, it's the federal government that has opened up this trade with these countries and allowed them to start shipping things in. So if it is just left up to the states, I think most of the states probably would just say, no, we want our own factories, we want our own industries here, you know.
They might, and I think a lot of this would be solved too by a change in foreign policy.
Yeah.
You know, we're pretty aggressive with our foreign policy, yet we expect them to do the right thing for us.
Yeah.
Like, how? In what world does that make sense? You know? So I think, you know, we didn't touch on foreign policy tonight, and that might be another conversation for another time. I'm happy to talk about it, though.
Yeah.
But
well, we got like you said, about 100 more days to the election. We can have you back. We'd love to have you back.
Okay. Did you get your question?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
We're just gonna move on. I think we should, you know, kind of summarize like why should we vote in this room? Why should our viewers, the state of Indiana or District 3, vote for you?
because I am the only candidate who's actually telling you, giving you specific answers to the questions you're asking. I'm telling you that I will not vote to increase the debt ceiling. Now, what does that mean? That means government's too big. It needs to shrink. We can all agree on that, but how do we do it? Cut the funding. We're not going to raise the debt ceiling anymore. It's going to stop. That might be painful. That might hurt. People might lose their jobs. But there's no easy answer to this problem. You know, that needs to be done. You know, vote for me on that alone because I'm telling you I won't. But vote for me also for a lot of other reasons because I'm the only pro-liberty candidate on the ballot.
And when you say lose jobs, you mean federal?
Federal jobs,
well,
yeah.
And I think a lot of people too, I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I guess just because I know we have a lot of people that do ask a lot of questions, like when you say don't raise the debt ceiling, a lot of people think, well, so what? It's the government money they're spending. Well, think about this. The government raises that debt ceiling, inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation.
That's the
so
connection.
If you're ticked off about prices of everything, that's why. Because they just keep raising the amount of debt, keep printing more money, inflation. So if you want the prices of everything to go back down to where you can afford it, take your vacations, buy maybe a little bit nicer car, buy a little bit nicer house. We need to quit raising the debt ceiling.
And at this point, just buying what you need to survive.
Buying eggs. I mean, talk to John Russ, they know about that. So,
no, but that's an important issue, I think. You know, and the more you kind of dig into where I stand on the issues, you see, like, okay, this guy's saying something that somebody else isn't saying, or for whatever reason. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they're not willing to.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, the power needs to come back to the states, the people of the states. We need to be running the show here, not the federal government. You know, it's too big. They've got too much power. They've got too much control in our lives. They're telling us what we can put in our bodies, what we have to put in our bodies. It needs to stop.
All right, I agree.
all right, Eric, you got a Facebook page, an email address?
Yeah, well, I have a personal Facebook page because Facebook did not like that I was speaking out against Ukraine funding, which goes back to foreign policy. Maybe we can talk about that next time. But they banned me. They blocked my account and said I was under review months ago. Never let me come back, of course.
Yeah.
But find me on Facebook, just Eric Whalen. It's my personal page. Shoot me a friend request, and I'll accept.
We will try to put a link.
Yeah, and
Cool.
if anyone's watching this and you got questions for Eric, we can reach out and ask him, or we can get him back for another interview. So
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back. Or, just message me directly. Message me on Facebook. I'll get back to you. You know, I'll let you know.
They got a whole team of people at Facebook just wanting to get him back on.
And hopefully, well, after this, we are gonna film something else. It's gonna be like 10, 15 minutes long on our locals. That if you want to see it, you have to go to our locals to see that part of the interview. Because I have some other questions. I don't want to
gonna
ask.
be on camera for that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
But that, and I have a shameless plug. hate to do this, but if you like barbecue, come on down to Get Jimmy's Barbecue. It's a food truck. It's delicious. I promise. I told him I would, share it. But friend of ours. So
And share our podcast, share this video, because even if you don't like us, you probably like Eric. So share it so other people can get to know him. And
get out there and get registered to vote too if you're not registered, because that's really the first step in making a change, is having your vote count, having your voice heard. So
actually, as we are, while we're on there, make sure you check your voter registry and stuff. You hear about that stuff that's going on?
What now?
I think in Illinois, some lady apparently checked her voter registry, and she's never voted in a midterm, and it had her voting in all types of things. So I would check that regularly. I'm sure Indiana's not doing it. But
that's par for the course probably for Illinois. Hopefully,
what's that saying? Vote early and vote often.
Check what's going on. I mean, it's you never know. Just check your stuff, people.
Yep, I agree.
All right, well, I guess we'll switch over to the other to the locals.
All right,
extra stuff.
Bye, Facebook.
Thanks.
Bye.